Good morning. Welcome everybody to today's webinar, The Power of the Proper Listing. Just a quick introduction of who I am because time is of the essence today, and I want to make sure everybody benefits from today because we have a lot to go over. My name is Anthony. I work here at Orange County Realtors. Been here now for almost 19 years, started off in the MLS department. So I know guaranteed I'll speak to everybody regarding rules, regulations, violations, all that fun stuff. What I'm also a part of is our outreach program. Our outreach program is designed to give you training on all your tools and products. And I think you guys can see this. Not only do I train on all the tools and products like MLS, how to add and modify a listing, create a CMAs, things like that, but I also give a training on zip forms. Zip forms, I basically show you how to put together your transactions electronically, how to digitally sign your contracts, and of course, all the advanced tools that Zip Forms has to offer. And of course, I love training on tech. I love showing agents how they can utilize their technology tools to better their real estate industry. Now, I usually have a co-host with us, Cece Robles. She's our Pro Standards Director and our MLS Director, but she's unfortunately been pulled into a hearing. So I am your host today. So with that said, I love to get everybody started on a fun little thing here. So this is going to require that everybody have a nice little participation. So in your chat boxes, we're going to play a little game. Okay, so what we're going to do here real quickly is we're going to play the game. A little family feud here. Top 6 violations on the board. Number 1 answer will get us surprise. So what do you guys think might be the top 6 violations that we experience in our MLS system today? So if you can, type that answer in the chat box. Oop, we already see here the Q&A. We see here fair housing. Fair housing is an issue, so that would fall under number 5, the property description. So property description violations coming soon status. We see here some great answers. MLS listing violations with the wrong information. So inaccurate information. Whoops. Sorry. There we go. Inaccurate info. Not updating on time, that's inaccurate information. No photography, that is number 3. Great answer there. Pictures in the MLS, no photos. You're right. Great answer, Sharon. Hoda, not updating on time, that falls under property information. Great. Let's see here. Olivia, you said CRMLS. What violation is that? Tax information, that would fall under inaccurate information. No listing on the start date. Sharon, that is the correct answer there. Late entry of a listing. Number 1, congratulations, Sharon Lewis, for that awesome answer. So Sharon, for your $10 Amazon gift card, what is your email address? You can send that to me via private chat so that we can do that. Awesome. We've got C's status, please number, property, email, updates, photos. You're absolutely awesome there, Kat. Olivia, you said timing, 2 days. Okay, that's good. So we got some late entries there. So we got branded media, and of course, copyright is also one of our top 6 violations. So we see here that we've got that great information. So again, congratulations, Sharon Lewis, for that answer of the late entry. Kat, great answers as well. So it looks like you guys are pretty dialed into, a lot of these violations. Hopefully you haven't received any violation notices from CRMLS, but we're going to talk about these today just a little bit. So we're going to start off with 12.5, MLS rule 12.5, the misuse of public remarks, the property description, public description, things like that. Okay. Now, really, the property description in the MLS is really only meant to describe the physical aesthetics of a home. Okay. Your property description should not include any gate codes, showing instructions, compensation information, lockbox data, occupancy status such as vacant, go direct, things like that. Email addresses are a big no-no. Websites are a super big no-no in that property description, along with phone numbers, agent brokerage information, and of course, open house data. Okay. Now, the other big thing you got to be careful of is language that violates fair housing laws and guidelines in the MLS. Okay. So we have to be super, super careful of these types of things. So really, when it comes to the property description, you're only really meant to describe the aesthetics of the home. This is, home has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, overlooking, the green belt, things like that. So we have to be really, really super careful on those types of things. And so I know one of the answers early on that were given in our little game about fair housing, a lot of people may go, well, geez, Tony, what kind of language are we talking about when it comes to fair housing? Well, great enough here. What I like about CRMLS is that all we need to do is look at this nice little list. Now, this list is just a sample of what information can and cannot be said in the MLS or even in advertising. Okay. Now, even though we have phrases to avoid and phrases to be cautioned about, really anything that needs to be cautioned really shouldn't be said. Okay. Now, here again is just a small little sample, but you shouldn't say things like, crippled or, churches or ethnic references. One thing that we definitely want to avoid is saying things like, this is great for women only, or whites only, or Hispanics only, things like that. Okay. Now, funny enough, things that are not allowed in the MLS are things like walking distance to a property, even though it says a phrase that can be used, but you want to use it with caution. Walking distance technically should not be said. And you go, well, why is that? Well, technically, not everybody is able to walk. So if you say that it's a walking distance to a certain item or a certain thing, like hiking trails, to the beach, to the stores, and somebody's not able to walk, they may all of a sudden feel like they're discriminated against. Now, what I find interesting is that phrases to avoid, you can't say things like women or women only, but you can say men or men only. That's not true. As a matter of fact, if it's for one sex, if you can't say something that discriminates or could be discriminatory against one sex, then it's definitely for the other, or even one ethnic group. So be mindful of things like this. Can't say things like, this is a great home for a family. Why is that? Because not every home has a family, or not everybody has a family. So they may feel that the property owner may discriminate against them if they have or don't have a family. Just like you can't say this is a great home for an executive. Not everybody's an executive. Can't say that this is a great home for a first-time home buyer. Well, geez, if I'm selling my home to want to buy this home, is the homeowner going to discriminate against my offer if I'm not a first-time home buyer? Or will the listing agent discriminate because maybe I'm going with a conventional loan, not an FHA? So these are things that we need to be really mindful of. Okay. So if you needed a more elaborate use or elaborate list, you can always, or this list specifically, you can always go to CRMLS's website. I will include this link in our email to you guys. By the way, we are recording today's session, so everybody attending today will get a copy of today's session. And you all will also get a copy or the PDF copy of this presentation that we are presenting today. So are there any questions about fair housing or the property description? And I am opening it up to questions. Drew says, nope, totally get it. All right, awesome, Drew, that's great. Anybody else? Do you guys have any questions regarding this? Now, I know that some people go, well, what happens if I say, this is Spanish tile or French doors or plantation shutters? Am I not allowed to say that? No, you can say that because you're describing the particular item in the house. So if it's Spanish tile or French doors or plantation shutters, you're describing what type of shutters those are, or what type of tile that is, or what type of door that is. What you can't say is, this is a great home for French speaking people, or this is a great French speaking neighborhood or Spanish speaking neighborhood. Now, all of a sudden, you're singling out a particular group and maybe excluding out other groups. All right. If there are no questions regarding fair housing wording or property description, let's go to the next. Now, by the way, we do have what they call syndication remarks. Now, while you're inputting a listing underneath the property description, there is a section called syndication remarks. Now, the syndication remarks does allow for you to add in your phone number, your email address, maybe even a branded virtual tour link in your syndication area. Okay. Now, typically you may not think about this because you just put in the property description. Well, typically when your listing goes out to the internet, it immediately in the MLS system copies the property description and does input it into the syndication remarks field for those third-party websites that do not look at the property description field. Now, some of those websites sometimes does not give the listing agent credit on those properties. This is a great area where you can reword that property description to a degree to include your name, your phone number, your email address, and of course your branded videos. But it still needs to make sure that you do not violate any other fair housing data. Okay, so just be mindful of that. Now, just so you know, the property description and the syndication remarks field does have up to 2,500 characters that you can type in if you choose. So you can rework the property description a little bit to include listed by Anthony Breed of Jack and Jill Real Estate. Give me a call for showings in that field. Okay, so you can include that. Are there any questions on the syndication remarks? All right, next violation. 8.3 rule, MLS rule 8.3, accuracy of data. It is the listing broker and the listing agent's responsibility that represents the information inputted into the MLS as accurate to the best of their knowledge. Okay, so you will need to use good faith to determine the accuracy of the information and make sure that when you're inputting the information that you're submitting that information to the best of your knowledge. Okay, this includes things like the APN number or tax record number, the MLS areas, the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the square footage. Okay, all the information that you've discovered about that property that you're inputting into the MLS, you need to indicate, or it has to be accurate. Okay, to the best of your ability. Now, this also includes your statuses. You got to make sure that you change your listing into the appropriate statuses when needed. Okay. Now, for those of you who may or may not know, there are various different statuses within the MLS. Okay. Now, real quickly, does anybody know the difference between, say, pending status and active under contract. And again, I'll give you a quick second to either raise your hand or type it in the chat. Yes. So Drew says, yes, one has contingencies removed, the other one doesn't. That's part of it. That is part of it. So Drew, that's a great answer. Real quickly, the differences between active under contract and pending or U status versus P status is this. Active under contract, U status says that there's a signed accepted offer between seller and buyer. You have opened escrow, but either A, you're waiting for contingencies to be removed, or B, the seller has given you written instructions to still solicit the property or actively market the property to entertain other offers to be placed into backup position. Okay. So, and Sharon goes, pending is it gone past contingencies and is ready to close? It could be part of it, Sharon. Hoda had the same kind of answers. Pending, no offer, no more offers. Olivia, that's kind of true too. So active under contract says that there's a signed accepted offer. You have opened escrow, but either A, you're waiting for contingencies to be removed, or B, the seller has instructed you to still solicit the property for other offers to be placed into backup position. Now, pending status or P status says that you have a signed accepted offer between seller and buyer. You have opened escrow, but either A, contingencies have been removed, or B, the seller has given you written instructions to no longer solicit the property any longer and just go with the one firm offer. So it is perfectly feasible for a listing that is actively being marketed under A to go from A directly into pending status. Just all that depends on what the seller wants you to do, okay, or needs you to do. Even though there may still need to be contingencies still might need to be removed. If the seller tells you or writes to you, I no longer want the property solicited, I just want to go with this one offer, then you could go and change that listing from active directly into pending. Now, anybody know the difference between withdrawn and canceled? And I'll give you guys a second to answer that. And by the way, really spot on to understand these statuses and the MLS rules so far. Anybody know the difference between withdrawn and canceled? All right. The difference between withdrawn and canceled is this. Withdrawn, W status. Awesome, Drew. That's a great answer. So withdrawn status, W status says that the seller wishes to no longer sell their property, but the listing agreement between the seller and the brokerage is still active. So this allows, so the seller says, I wish to no longer sell my home, but the contract or the listing agreement between the seller and the brokerage is still active. So now the listing agent puts that listing to withdrawn, which now prevents any other agent to solicit that property. So a seller cannot sign legally another contract with another brokerage because they are still under contract with the current brokerage. Canceled status, K status says that the seller wishes to no longer sell their property and that the listing agreement between seller and brokerage has been officially canceled. Okay. Now, funny enough, the only person that's allowed to cancel a contract is not the agent, but the broker. Because technically, even though you've got the listing agreement, only that listing agreement is between the seller and the brokerage. You are just a representative of the brokerage to be allowed to represent the seller in the sale of that home. So even though they want you to cancel the contract, it's still up to the broker to allow the person out of contract. That's why you as an agent are not allowed to cancel listings in the MLS, because that is only reserved for the right of the broker to do per the signed cancellation of contract. Without that cancellation of contract signed by the broker, that contract is not officially canceled. Okay. So it's really important that you guys do this. Now, by the way, updating information in the MLS, especially your statuses, requires 2 calendar days now per the updated MLS rules and regulations to be modified. So once you get that signed listing agreement or that signed accepted offer, and you open escrow or you get the signed accepted offer, you've got 2 calendar days to get that listing into the correct status. Any changes that need to be made to the listing, whether it's a property description change or a list price change, that has to be done now within 2 calendar days. So the big thing that's been updated in the MLS this past September was that they changed it from business days to calendar days. Okay. Now, one big inaccuracy of information that I constantly see, especially to this day, is the contradiction of status. I will see here in the MLS system that the status is active, meaning that you're actively showing the property. There is no signed accepted offer on the property, but right down below in the body of the listing, they've got under the showing instructions, no showings until a certain date. So if the property is active and is allowed to be shown, then you cannot have a contradiction here that says that you're not allowed to show the property until a particular date. If you're not going to be actively showing the property, then you need to have that property in, say, hold, do not show until that date. Now we have a quick question here from Drew. If you have an off-market sale when entering into the MLS, 1 sold and 0 marketing has been done, how do you enter it properly without a violation? You see some 0 days on market and language shows entered for comp purposes only and sold off market. Is this allowed? Drew, yes and no. And we're going to get to that here in just a second when it comes to inputting a listing into the MLS. In this case, the listing would have to be inputted in as a registered status listing, meaning that their property is not being marketed whatsoever, but they've gotten permission to report the listing in the MLS for comp purposes as a sold property, at which point the listing agent would then need to submit the closed paperwork with all the necessary information for the MLS system to take that listing from registered to closed status. And then they would mark the listing as sold for comp purposes. So technically the listing was not marketed, but it was sold outside of the MLS essentially. But as long as it's under contract, the listing agent still is obligated to input that listing into the MLS as a registered status listing, which again, we'll talk about here in just a moment. Did that help? Awesome. All right, so the contradiction of status you got to be careful of. Active, if no showings, then the listing technically should be on hold. I can't tell you how many violations I see each and every day where an agent has an active listing, but then they go right into the showing instructions or the private remarks, no showings until a date. And then they wonder why they get a $250 fine. So be super careful on this. Now, speaking of which, another inaccuracy of information is the auto sold. Now, usually if a listing goes auto sold, it is flagged with a red flag. Now you would go, well, geez, the listing sold. Why is there a flag next to it? Well, there's a flag next to it because the listing agent neglected to report their listing on time. Now, in the MLS, when you report a listing as either active, under contract, or pending, in one of the required fields is a projected close of escrow date, meaning when you think, based on your paperwork, when the listing should close. Now, at that point, it is up to the listing agent to make sure that when the listing does close, that they go into the MLS to report it as an actual sale. Now, we understand that you as an agent sometimes get super busy and you tend to forget about things. Okay. This now means, and CRMLS understands that. So what they try to do is they send you at least 4 notifications reminding you when your listing should be closing, to give you an opportunity to either close it on time or extend out the projected COE date in case that listing is not intended to close on the date that you first indicated. The first notification goes out 14 days prior to that projected COE. Then a second notification goes out 7 days prior to you. It's all emailed saying, hey, by the way, your listing is due to close 7 days on this date. Then they send you a third notification the day before. So this now gives you an opportunity to go in and extend it if you have to. And then they send you a fourth notification the day of that projected COE. Now, if you've neglected to extend out that COE date within those 4 notifications, now on the third day past that projected COE date, the MLS will send you a warning saying, hey, your listing is about to close on this date, you're past due. If you still neglect it, on the 5th day, the MLS system will automatically take that listing from active, under contract, or pending and convert it to closed. Now, if the MLS system automatically does it, then they will automatically send you a fine. And that is because you've let your listing lapse 3 extra days past that date that it should have closed. Now, real quickly, Sharon asks, with fines, do they generally give you a warning first on the first infraction? It depends on the violation, Sharon. And we'll talk about that here near the tail end of the class today. There are some fines that are immediate fines. There are some fines or some infractions that do give you a chance to correct it. In this case, the CRMLS will give you 4 notifications to make sure that you close your listing on time. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know of really too many agents that don't follow their listings. If they're in escrow, they are following deadlines to make sure that that listing closes on time. Because what happens when your listing doesn't close on time? What don't you get? A commission. So I don't know anybody who does not let things not happen because they just don't care about their commissions. If you're following up on when your listing is to close, then you got to make sure that your listing shows closed in the MLS, because there are some brokerages out there that will not pay their agents until they see that listing in the MLS closed appropriately. If your listing is due not to close on the date that you indicate, make sure that you go back under your add edit, bring up your listing under the add edit section, go back under either change to active, under contract, or change to close or pending, and extend out that projected COE date if it needs to be. Or, geez, you set it out 30 or 45 days, and then you close, go into the MLS and make sure your listing does get reported as closed. There should be no excuse why you guys don't do that. And if you are that busy with dealing with clients, then this is probably a good opportunity to evaluate of getting an assistant so that they can help you report your listings correctly. Because if your assistant joins the MLS, they will be linked to your account so that they can go into your listing per your instructions to change the statuses and update that listing to the appropriate status. Are there any questions on auto sold? And by the way, if your listing does go auto sold, then the only people that can correct that listing is us here at the association. We're going to need to see a copy of your closing statement. We're going to need to see that an email from you making sure that we get that listing reported on time, because if you don't, then it's another fine on top of the non-correction. So not only do you get a $250 fine for your listing going to auto sold, but then you're going to get another fine on top of that for not correcting the listing 2 days after that, or after that violation. So these violations stack up super quick if you're not careful. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't like seeing agents get fined for something that can be easily corrected and maintained. That's not my job. My job is to help you try to avoid these things. All right. MLS rule 7.8, mandatory delivery of a listing agreement. So this has been updated this past September, but no matter what, it is the listing agent broker must either exclude the listing from the MLS or enter the listing into the MLS within 2 calendar days of the effective listing agreement date. This has been changed from 2 business days to 2 calendar days. That means that if you take a listing agreement effective as of Saturday, you have until Monday to input that listing into the MLS. CP asks a question real quick. Sometimes a client wants to remove the photos after the property is closed. Are we able to do that afterwards if we forgot to remove it before the listing? Unfortunately, CP, no. MLS rule 11.8 or 11.9 says that no data is allowed to be removed from the MLS. No data, not even photos. Now, technically, when a listing goes sold, the public websites should be taking down the photos from their websites. But if you know the internet, it is almost virtually impossible, even if you were to have those photos removed from the listing within the MLS, those photos cannot be guaranteed to be removed from the internet. So buyers requesting photos to be removed, number one, the agreement between the listing agent and the seller state that photos being uploaded are, per the seller's instructions. So buyers really don't have no say-so over that, number one. But number two, the MLS rules, because the MLS is needed for comps by other agents within the MLS, they have to show why the homes got what they got or why they're listed at what they're listed for. So they need to have access to those photos, which is why we have an MLS rule in the MLS that prevent agents from just having the photos deleted. So just be aware of that. This is why you need to look at your listing agreements. Look at paragraph, I think it's paragraph 11 of the MLS or of the listing agreement indicated about photos. Let's see here. CP asks, what about, can we have photos removed from the consumer sites like Zillow, Redfin? Technically, they should be pulling them down already, but yes, you could contact those public websites to make sure that those photos aren't viewed for privacy's sake. But technically, if they're getting an IDX feed from us, it's per that IDX feed that they should be pulling down those photos except for the first photo. But in the MLS, nobody else sees it other than agents within the MLS system. Does that help, CP? Awesome. All right, real quickly here. So Rule 7.8, you got 2 calendar days to input the listing into the MLS. So step number 1, you get the signed listing contract. Okay. Signed listing contract says this is when the listing agreement is effective in paragraph 1. So now either two things are going to happen. 2A or step 2, 2A says that you've got 2 calendar days to input from that effective date to input that listing into the MLS as either a registered status listing, a coming soon, or an active listing. Now, the exception to this is option number 2B. If you begin to market the property. Sorry about that. Looks like Zoom kicked me out there for a second. I apologize. Can you guys hear me now? I froze. All right. Yeah, it looks like Zoom had a little hiccup and booted me out. Excellent. Thank you, Sharon. Back to B, 2B. Yes. So 2B, you put a sign on the property. That's all of a sudden marketing. You talk about it to a client, colleague, members of the public. You write a social media post about it, the property. That's all marketing. So say as an example, John and his wife are sitting with me at the kitchen table. I get the signed listing agreement. I go in the back of my car. I pull out my for sale sign. I stick it in the property. The moment I stick that for sale sign on the property, I am now marketing the home. I am now required within one business day to input that listing into the MLS as either coming soon or active. Okay. Now, per my listing agreement, specifically section 7, and we'll talk about this here in just a few minutes. If the client tells me not to market the property ever, either for the entire listing period or for a certain number of days while I have the listing agreement, then the listing would need to go in as a registered status listing. Okay. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. Now, coming soon status was created last year. Coming soon status was created last year to go in to coincide with the NAR rules of clear cooperation. Excuse me, whereby the property is not ready to be shown just yet and allows an agent to market the property ahead of time. Okay. Now, what are some of the benefits of coming soon? Benefits of a property going to coming soon status would be that you're allowed to market the property. It's going to be displayed on the MLS. There will be a buying agent commission offered, okay, because you again are marketing the property within the MLS. One of the nice things about coming soon is that no days on market or DOM is not counted, okay, but coming soon status does limit the distribution to the internet. Not every website will have access to the coming soon listings. Okay. Now here's the big one. No showings are allowed at all. While the property is in coming soon status, you are not allowed to show the property to anyone, not even your own clients. And coming soon status is up to, or for a period of a maximum of 21 days from the listing agreement. So if the property is not ready to show, maybe there's some cleanup, maybe there's a little construction going on, but the seller is instructing you to market the property ahead of time to get some interest, then you can input that in, but you're, up to a period of 21 days. Now, coming soon does allow for offers to be submitted. Okay, so maybe Sharon has a buyer and she looks at the listing, she sees some of the photos of the property. Her client is interested in the property. So what they can do is submit an offer to the listing. And if that offer does get accepted, then in a way, this now allows that buyer to go in and look at the home because of their inspection. But if they drop out, or which now requires that I take the listing from coming soon and put it in as either, or modify the status as either active under contract or pending. And if we fall out of escrow because Sharon's buyer backs out of the deal, they didn't like the property, now I can only put the listing back to active. So coming soon is a one-shot deal, by the way. Now, before I continue on, just want to let everybody know that before you input a listing in as a coming soon status, there is a form that is required. It's called the seller's instructions to input listing into coming soon status form, which is found in zip forms under the CRMLS library. That form is required before you list that property as a coming soon. Without that form, that is a $1,500 fine by CRMLS. And by the way, CRMLS is reaching out to agents that have their listings in the coming soon status and asking them for a copy of that form. If the agent is not able to provide that form, then it's an immediate fine. Now, Olivia had asked, what is that called? An SELM? No. The SELM says that's the seller's instructions to exclude listing from the multiple listing service, which that would be for the registered status. The coming soon form is it's called the seller's instructions to input listing into the MLS as coming soon. And again, that is found under the CRMLS library. Now, real quickly, I can show you that form. So here, what we're going to do is we're just going to go to www.car.org. We're going to log into our zip forms real quickly. So here, I'm just going to log into my zip forms. So listing agents. You just don't arbitrarily input a listing into coming soon. The seller has to instruct you. Okay. So say as an example, we're in our listing transaction and we've already talked to the seller to understand that they want to input their listing into, they're not ready to show it right now, but they want me to market the property. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to simply go over to where it says all forms here in the upper right corner. Now, this is not a CAR form, so I'm not going to find that form here. What I need to do is now I need to switch my libraries from the California Association of Realtors library. I'm going to click on the down arrow where I can now access all the other libraries offered to me by CAR. But we have one here called the California Regional Multiple Listing Service Library, CRMLS. And here under that library, there is the form that says seller's instructions to place into MLS the coming soon status. That form, if we add it to the transaction, basically explains to the seller what coming soon status is, what the limitations are, how long a period of time, and that they are okay with me inputting that listing into the MLS as coming soon, whereby I now have a start showing date when I'm allowed to start showing that property to members of the public or to other agents. And again, that date is not to exceed 21 days of my start marketing date. Does that help everybody? So this is the form you want and need to have for your records. You don't have to give it to anybody other than your broker. And if CRMLS ever asks for it, you've got it readily available, and which, by the way, has to be signed off by your broker. It can't just be signed by your clients and you. This does require the broker's signature. What is the form if you want to start showing earlier than the 21 days? Then it's probably going to be a modification of terms, Olivia, or an amendment to the contract. or an addendum. So I would talk to your broker. Does that help? No, that doesn't help you. You want to talk to your broker, Olivia, and ask them. More than likely, your broker is going to say you need to do a modification of terms. So if, say, as an example, it was to be earlier, say like on October 15th rather than October 20th, then you're probably going to need to do a modification of terms signed off by the seller for them to authorize you to start showing that property sooner rather than later. Does that make sense? I would imagine CRMLS would want the date to be the date when it went online as coming soon, not the date the CRMLS requested it. It's not CRMLS requesting it. It's the seller telling you when they want you to start showing the property, Sharon. So say, as an example, you're marketing or you're marketing the property as of October 1, but they don't want you to start showing the property to people until October 21st. So if you'll notice here, it says seller's instructions, not CRMLS's instructions. CRMLS is just providing you a form to officially to get the seller's instructions to put it into this status. And then on that date, say October 21, is when you'll be turning the listing from coming soon to active, meaning you're actively allowing the showings. Now, if you are ahead of time, maybe construction got done early, the cleanup got done early, then the seller is going to need to send you some sort of written instruction to start to modify that coming soon to active earlier than later. And usually that's done by a form like modification of terms, addendum, or something like that, whereby they can sign off and written instructions to do that, even an email. But I would talk to your broker further on how to get those instructions, because each broker is going to be a bit different. Let's see here, Sharon. I meant if CRMLS requested that doc and the agent did not have it done, so send it to their clients to sign on the date that CRMLS requested it, then that's not good enough. Because in the MLS, it records when you posted the listing as a coming soon. So if you all of a sudden try to backdate things, now you're committing fraud, Sharon. Don't do that. If CRMLS says, we want to see that, and by the way, if you're electronically doing this, you're going to see the electronic dates. You can't flub those. Okay, so be really careful on what you're doing, because you don't want to commit fraud. If you're going to do the coming soon, get it done the day that you're getting the listing agreement signed. That would be the best. That would be the best course of action, because you've explained to them what coming soon is. I get you. All right. Okay. So that's coming soon. Now, real quickly, again, for those clients that don't want any marketing done or things like that, MLS Rule 7.9, no cooperation of a listing, or 7.9.1. Okay, 7.9.1, there are times where the seller wants you to withhold the property from within the MLS. Okay, because maybe they don't want any marketing, they don't want it seen on the internet, things like that. Okay, this is where either the SELM is going to need to be done, or read that section of the RLA, Residential Listing Agreement, section 7D, either 1 or 2. Subsection 7D, 1 or 2, basically is the seller's instructions to the agent when they want the property to be marketed. Again, subsection 2 says they don't want any marketing done at all on the property, or they don't want any marketing up until a certain date. Then this is going to require you to input that listing into the registered status. Now, with the registered status, when you're inputting that, or the registered status says that there's no marketing at all being done on this property. It's not displayed at all and cannot be found in the MLS. There is no buying agent commission offered whatsoever. No days are marked or counted. No distribution to any of the public websites, because why? That's all considered marketing. And of course, there are showings allowed, but showings are only allowed to those clients that have a direct agency relationship, either with the listing agent or someone or an agent of that office, not of the company, but of the office. So that means that they have to have a signed AD, or disclosure regarding agency relationship, between you and the client to be able to see that property within the office. Real quickly, CP asks, with coming soon, is the listing agent allowed to show it to their own buyers? No. Coming soon does not allow for any showings, whether it's your client or not. Okay, can't show it at all. Or is the listing agent violating that rule? If they are doing so, they are violating the rule. By the way, showing a property that's in coming soon is actually a $2,500 fine, or up to 1% of the list price. So $2,500 fine, or at least up to 1% of the list price. So be really careful about that, CP. Can you imagine on a $1 million listing having to pay 1% in fines for just showing your client the property? Be kind of amazing, wouldn't it? So don't do that. Now, a registered status listing does allow for showings, but again, they have to be under an agency agreement with either you, the listing agent, or someone within your office. Now, how do we report if an agent did that? I would send CRMLS a direct email, which is compliance@crmls.org, to report that violation, CP. And they're going to need to have some sort of proof. So if you have a picture or a video or something along those lines where the listing agent is showing the property while it's in the coming soon status, then yeah, I would report it. Awesome. Real quickly here, can registered be shown for cooperative purposes only after it closes? Well, after it closes, it's no longer under contract. So how are you showing a property that's closed escrow? Because no one's representing anybody at that point. I'm not understanding your question, Jay. For CMAs, no, because you can't pull up those listings. Now, if the listing did get reported as closed and the seller authorizes you to report the property as a sold for comp purposes, then that's when you, as the listing agent, have to give over that data to CRMLS directly for them to take that property out of registered and place it into closed. But it also will require at least one photo of the exterior. Then at that point, you could use that property for CMAs. Awesome. Now, by the way, one of the more complicated things here when we talk about marketing, what is considered marketing, by the way, MLS Rule 7.9 indicates exactly what is considered marketing. Marketing is any sort of advertising, but is not limited to for sale signs, websites, social media postings, brokerage or franchise operated websites, communication in any format, whether it is written or verbal. So if you were talking about this property to somebody else, that is considered marketing of a home. Okay. Hey, John, I've got a property that's for sale that's not listed in the MLS, oh, guess what? I'm marketing the property. So be really careful about that. Okay. Even talking about this property to other brokerages is considered marketing. So be really, really super careful. If on paragraph 7D, either subsection 1 or 2, the seller has indicated that they do not want any marketing done, do not do any marketing. Okay. If you do, then you can get in trouble. Even a seller talking about the property to somebody else, my home is up for sale, that's considered marketing. They're under contract with you and they're talking about the property, they are now marketing that property. So be super careful about that. Yes, CP, you had a question. No? Okay. All right. Is it okay under SELM? If you did an SELM, that's fine. The SELM says that you are not allowed to do any marketing, not even in the MLS, of the property. The SELM was modified with the clear cooperation rules to say that the seller is instructing you to not market the property. So, you can use it in conjunction with the RLA. It just depends on what your broker requires in your files. But technically, the RLA residential listing agreement, subsection or paragraph 7, subsection D, subparagraph either 1 or 2 is sufficient enough. You don't need to submit a copy of that form to anybody anymore, which is why the registered status was created last year, so that agents could input their listings into the MLS to be compliant with the clear cooperation policy, but not market the property. Now, my big hang up on that is if the seller expects you to solicit the property to the best of your ability to entertain the highest and best offer, how do you do that if they expect you not to input it into the MLS? Your listing goes out to more than 90,000 agents, part of the MLS, more than 91,000 websites worldwide to entertain the highest and best offer. Why would they want to limit you on that at that point? So just understand that they make it very challenging if they don't want that listing to be shown on the internet or on the MLS, which now means they don't want you to market the home. So just to give you guys a heads up. Did that help, Olivia? All right, real quickly, on to the next topic because we're short on time today. Listing photos. Paragraph or MLS rule 11.5, photographs on the MLS. Okay, you must have at least one photo of the exterior of the property within 2 calendar days of inputting that listing into the MLS. Now, regardless of the status. Now, there's a couple of exceptions to this rule. Okay, number 1. And by the way, the exterior as seen from the street. Now, as you all know, that in the MLS, you can have up to 75 photos on a property. Okay, and the first photo does not have to be of the exterior, but in those 75 photos, one of them must be of the exterior. Now, if it's going to be the only photo on that listing, then it must be of the exterior as seen from the street. It cannot just be of the door. Okay, it must be seen. The exterior structure must be seen so that it's an easy identifier where this property is located. Okay. Now, a couple of exceptions to this rule. Number 1, business opportunity listings do not need to have a photo. Okay. So that is one of the exceptions. A business opportunity, a business does not have to have a photo. Number 2, the listing is in registered status. Registered status listings does not require the listing to have a photo because it's not being marketed. As a matter of fact, earlier in our earlier slide, the only requirements to input that listing into the MLS as a registered listing is the listing date, expiration date, list price, property address. That's it. No photo is needed. The third reason a photo may not need to be on a listing is the listing agreement. Under paragraph 11, subsection A, if that is marked whereby the seller is instructing you that they do not want photos taken of the property at all, then no exterior photo would be required. But CRMLS must have a copy of that listing agreement showing why that listing does not have a photo. So those are your three exceptions: business opportunity, register status, or in the listing agreement, the seller indicates no photos are to be taken. Now, another issue when it comes to photos, 11.5 subsection B, copyright. Unauthorized use or reproduction of other people's media used on your listing, whether it is photos, descriptions, or even videos. Do not violate copyright laws. Do not use Google Street View or Google Satellite Views in any of your marketing materials, as well as your listing. Now, real quickly, because I know I've been coming at you guys pretty hard, I've got another little game here. Can anyone tell me what is not allowed in a photo or video in the MLS? Top 8 answers on the board here. Number 1 answer will get a $10 gift card. So real quickly. Oh, good. We've got people and animals. So Jay, you're close. No people and animals are not allowed in the MLS. The agent sign. Oh, who said that one? That was Sharon Lewis again. Got number 1, the agent sign. We got people, we got branding. There we go. That is number 7. Excellent. Watermarks. Phone numbers. Excellent. No minors. Well, that would be people, Veronica. Websites. Email addresses. Well, I don't know about churches, Sharon. You can show a church. I don't see a problem with that, especially if it's just outside the door. These are really great answers. So Sharon, congratulations on winning game number 2. Awesome. Congratulations. Congratulations. Those are great answers, everybody. Great answers. You guys are really on the ball for that one. Agent name, contact information. Awesome. So you're right. Branded media is forbidden in any still photography or virtual tours. Okay. You can't have agent, brokers' names, photos, logos, phone numbers, websites, email addresses. No pictures of people, no pictures of animals. Virtual tours that have any branding in it is prohibited in the MLS. No, because if you're taking lifestyle photos, Sharon, lifestyle photos would be a church out, maybe in the neighborhood. I get it. Fair housing, you probably don't want to discriminate against, people who are other denominations and things like that. But I mean, you just got to be careful of those things. When it comes to people and animals, you just got to be careful of like the lifestyle photos. Okay. Speaking of which, here are some examples of what I mean. These are actual photos from the MLS system that are actual in violations. So over here, somebody had said no pictures or no drawings, right? That's not true. You can have a drawing of the property, but it's got to be an accurate representation. One of the things in your photos and media is that you want to show a true representation of the property. So if the property is like a new home build that hasn't been fully constructed, then you can have a rendering of that property of what the property would look like after it was built. So in this case, that upper left-hand corner of picture, if the property does not look like this right now, or would be on that land with that type of sky, then this is an inaccurate photo. Okay. Can't say that you don't have drawings, but you got to be careful. Now, also, you got to be careful of copyright. You'll notice here that down below, there's also where they got this photo from. So if it's a photo rendering or even maybe a floor plan, floor plans are copyrighted material. So unless you made the floor plan yourself, if you're using other people's floor plans or pictures of their floor plans without their permission or written permission to do so, then you just shouldn't be using this. Okay. Let's see here. That picture with the people partying is kind of awesome though. Yes, totally get it. You know, the listing agent wanted to show how cool the house was. It was an entertainer's house, but here's a couple of problems. Number one, did you get permission from each and every one of those individuals to use their images in your marketing material? So without a signed agreement with them, you can't use their photo, right? You can't use them in your imaging because you're getting a monetary value for the sale of that property, number one. So like those lifestyle photos, you got to make sure faces are blurred out. Number two, what kind of message are you sending, right? Because I've seen some crazy photos where people are really dressed inappropriately. And I am really surprised how agents would use something like that. Number two, safety, right? Not only, I mean, granted, these are adults, but I've seen pictures of small children in a listing photo, sitting there with a, you know, wearing their diaper, drinking their bottle, sitting in the dining room. Now we have to remember that that listing goes out to 90,000 public websites. And unfortunately, what's one of the big problems of the internet predators. So in a way, with the address on the internet, this picture of a small child on that property, you've got, you know, predators out there that, you know, you don't want to compromise the safety of the home. And think about that when it comes to, say, like the family photos on the walls. Take those down. Again, you don't want to compromise the safety of the minors or of the people. Now, besides the physical nature of the people, think about the child's room. How many of you have seen pictures where in the MLS where it's of the child's room and then you've got the child's name written on the wall or painted on the wall? Anybody remember the day of stranger danger? Remember when you were taught that in school? What was one of the things that we were trying to be taught? Don't let mom and dad have your name written on your clothing, right? Why? Because strangers can come up to a 5, 6, 7-year-old, say their name, and then all of a sudden they've kidnapped that child, right? How would that be any different with their name painted on a wall? Remember, 75 photos, you don't have to use every photo. And if there's a photo of a child's room with their name on the wall or pictures on the wall showing that child or the family, don't use them. If on your day of your photography, take down those photos, turn them around, do something with them, because you don't want to compromise the safety. Now over here to the top right and to the bottom right, here we got the Google Street View, Google Satellite View. Now this is crazy, right? Well, geez, why can't I use Google Images? I found that image on the internet. It's free, right? It is free to use, except it's only used for educational purposes. If you look at Google's agreement when you sign up with Google, any image is meant to be used for educational purposes. Now, your argument may go, well, I'm educating the public where the house is located, but remember, you're selling the house. What do you get at the end of the day when you sell the house? Commission. So if you're using Google's proprietary images to make a monetary value or gain monetary value from the sale of that property, you technically need to pay Google the rights to use that photo or that image. Okay. So just so you know, don't use the Google images. Now, by the way, federal copyright violations, by the way, not only is this an MLS violation, but it's also a code of ethics violation. Okay. So an MLS violation of $1,500, a code of ethics violation of $10,000, and a federal violation, which, by the way, Google is suing real estate agents for using their images in their marketing. That's $150,000 per photo per incident, meaning MLS is one incident, a flyer is another incident, a postcard is another incident if you're using those images. That right there could be more than $450,000 in fines federally. And Google, how many of you have $450,000 just laying around? Don't use their images. Don't use even the city website images, because they have the rights to sue you too. So if it's an image that you pulled off the city website that shows a lifestyle, don't use any of those images. Take the pictures yourselves or pay your photographer to take those types of images. I love this one here at the bottom right, where somebody literally took a screenshot, printed it out on the computer, laid it on a sheet of paper, hand wrote stuff, rescanned it, and tried to pass it off as their own image. You can clearly indicate here at the corner of the Google Street View that it says Google Street View. You're pirating that image. Don't do that. Now here, bottom middle, we've got the picture of the dog. Unfortunately, animals should not have photos in the MLS unless the animal comes with the sale of the property, which I've only known that to happen one time in my life here at Orange County Realtors. Okay. Unless the animal comes with the sale of the home, don't do that. Now you may ask, well, geez, Tony, what's the problem here with the bottom left corner photo? The license plate, the picture of the car. If this is their personal property, remember, this goes out to the internet. And it's amazing how much private information you can pull off someone's driver's license plate or the license plate of the car. So be really careful. If there's a Lamborghini or the Ferrari or something like that, the picture of the safe in the closet, in the bedroom, make sure that's not seen in your photos. Don't compromise the safety of the home by indicating to people what's in that house or what that house has or what the homeowners own. Be very, very careful. You have two agreements that were created about 3 years ago when it came to photos and videos. Number one is the PIA, the photo image agreement. The photo image agreement is between you and your photographer of what rights you have to the photos and videos that the photographer is putting together for you. Do they give you full-on rights to own those images outright, or do they give you limited rights? The second form is called the PVR, the photo video release form. That is between you and the subject matter being photographed or videoed. Sellers need to do this to give you authorization to take photos and videos of the property, whether it's of the home or items within the property. Okay, so just be careful. Make sure that you have those two forms in your list of documents for your broker. Most brokers are already having you do this, so be careful of that. Okay. Now, I know we've gone over all these rules and regulations, so you need to be reminded, or maybe you need to elaborate on some of these rules. Where can you find them? Well, they can be found conveniently on Orange County Realtors' website. If you go to www.ocrealtors.org, simply move your mouse to where it says Member Services. A drop-down menu will appear, and then click on MLS. When you click on the MLS section, you will now be taken to the very section where you can now click on where it says Rules and Policies. Now here you're going to be given two different documents. One document will be the full 55-page document of the full-on MLS rules and regulations, elaborating everything and more of what we went over today in full legal terms. Now, how many of you love reading legal language about what you can and can't do in the MLS? Oh, you're welcome, Drew. We're almost done, I promise. Now, if those of you who don't like reading the full-on, 55-page document, anybody familiar with Cliff's Notes? Maybe you remember this back from when you were in school and you had to do book reports. Yes, excellent. What were Cliff's Notes, Drew? Excellent. I see a lot of people raising their hands. Awesome. It's a short version of that book, right? Basically summarized everything, gave you the little blurbs that you could literally create a book report and you didn't have to read the 1,400-page War and Peace. Well, guess what? Under that rules and policies section, underneath where it says rules and regulations is a document called the citation policy. Now, the citation policy, I love because what this is the Cliff's Notes version of the MLS rules. And what's really neat about this is it splits it up into a simple 4-column format. Column number 1 tells you the rule number. Column number 2 indicates if you get a warning or not. So if it says no, that means that it's an immediate fine. Column 3 summarizes what the rule is, and column 4 indicates the fine on breaking that rule. Fines can go as small as $100 up to $15,000 with a suspension of the MLS. Now, here's my disclaimer. Agents, if you follow this citation policy to the letter, you should never, ever get a fine, let alone a warning. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that if I ever need a full explanation of what 7.3 means, I can then pop back over to the full-on rules and regulations and then jump immediately down to rule 7.3 to read the full paragraph or paragraphs pertaining to that rule. Not to mention also the citation policy explains if you ever receive a fine and you want to dispute it, the procedures for disputing a fine, but just know, follow this simple 5-page document. If you do that, you should never, ever get into violations. With that said, are there any questions? I know we went over by 20 minutes, but you guys had a lot of really great questions today, and I wanted to follow up with you guys today. No, man, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. I hope you enjoyed today. Drew, thank you very much for the kind words. Does anybody have any questions at all today? Yes, sir. You have a question? You're welcome, Hoda. Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, if you all have no questions, then I want to thank everybody for attending today's class. If you do have any questions or concerns or need anything further explained, then feel free to either call me or reach out to me. Okay. And I'll write it here in the chat. You can feel free to call me at 949-586-6800 extension 104 or email me at Tony, Tony at ocrealtors.org. With that said, I want to thank everybody for attending today. I hope you all enjoyed today's class and that you come away from this way more knowledgeable and will not have any fines this day forward. And I wish you guys the best of luck with everything. Again, congratulations, Sharon, for winning both of our games today. I will have someone email you everything pertaining to your gift cards. And congratulations again. And I hope you guys have a great and successful weekend and getting those listings and getting those buyers into escrow. Have a great and wonderful day, and I will talk to you all again soon.